Welcome back to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. War Room Mock Draft Edition. This is our first War Room of the season. So naturally, I had to have my guy Field Yates on with me to do this. For those who don't remember last year, which is when I started doing this, the way it works is this is a entire first round mock draft. For every single pick, I am going to give my guest, Field, two options. He is going to pick one and explain why. I am going to do trades, but Field, I'm not going to do trades in this first edition because I just want every fan base to hear two players discussed. But I will introduce trades probably next week. Are you ready to do this?
I am so ready, Mina. I have been watching Hollis, Pierce, and Dominic Levet all morning to get ready. Oh, this is a first round mock draft. This is not day 3. Okay, got it. Noted.
Yeah, probably not going to hear those names today. But again, whatever team you root for, you're going to be discussed. So this moves quickly. So let's get started. All right. With the first overall pick, the Tennessee Titans have their choice of two players. I think you can probably guess the direction I'm going to go in here.
Yes.
Field?
Yep.
Are you going to take quarterback Cam Ward out of Miami or Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State?
Yeah, I'm going to do this exercise, by the way, Mina, sort of like a blend of what I would do and also how I think things are going to shape out. I'm going to go with Cam Ward. Some have described Tennessee as backing themselves into a corner with Cam Ward because they've signed Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle to join Will Levis in their quarterback room right now. I look at it more as this team is hyper-focused on Cam Ward and has been for quite some time, and they believe that he has some magic to him, some true number 1 overall pick ability. So I'm going Cam Ward here. As great as Abdul Carter is, the Titans obviously need a centerpiece, and this is a true blue 1 quarterback class. Don't bypass that one option in Cam at that first overall selection.
Okay, I should have said this at the beginning. I do want you to lean more what you would do.
Okay,
right?
fine
So
by me.
This is which is different because when you do mocks, for your purposes, it is much more the prediction business. I want you to give us the Field Yates opinions, which I think would be Cam Ward.
Cam Ward, yes.
Yeah, I'm sensing. So
Cam.
Okay. It's gonna get real interesting if you go in the direction I think you're gonna go in here. The Cleveland Browns are on the clock with the 2nd overall pick next. The Cleveland Browns, of course, have a need at quarterback.
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders from Colorado is an option here, but so is Abdul Carter, and really, honestly, the Travis Hunter as well. But these are the two options I'm giving you: Shedeur Sanders and Abdul Carter. You are Andrew Berry. Who are you taking?
Yeah, I'm really sorry that Abdul Carter had to wait this long, but you're now the number 2 pick in the 2025 NFL draft. The thoughts of him and Myles Garrett are frightening to think of right away. It would form inarguably one of the scariest pass rush duos in the entire draft class. To be clear, I have Shedeur Sanders 16th overall on the big board, Mina, whereas Carter is number 2, so he slots exactly where I have him, number 2 overall. Cleveland, congratulations. You still have a major quarterback problem. We will deal with that at a later date.
Okay, the New York Giants are up next. Shedeur Sanders is still on the board. I talked about this on my last week's episode about the Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson quarterback room and whether or not that prohibits them from taking Shedeur Sanders. I don't think it does. Whether or not they should, though, is a totally different conversation. It is one that you're about to have because you are going to pick now between Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback, and Travis Hunter, who is, some people believe, the most talented player in the entire draft.
Yeah, to me, he is the most talented player in the draft, Mina. But I am going to go with Shedeur Sanders here. And I've really wrestled with this pick back and forth, both in terms of a prediction and also in terms of what I would do. People have said, hey, the Giants have taken care of the quarterback position. I've thought about this, Mina. We've had plenty of recent examples where a team has made far more significant investments in a quarterback than the Giants have made this offseason and still taken one. Heck, a year ago, the Falcons gave Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed. It did not prevent them from taking Michael Penix Jr. So some have said, have the Giants' actions up to this point shown us how they feel about Shedeur Sanders? It's possible. My perception is this, Mina, is that the Giants don't know what they're going to do yet. Shedeur Sanders' pro day is coming up, and the Giants, I'm sure, will have more time with Shedeur. And this evaluation is going to probably involve all levels of the organization. I imagine ownership will say, if we don't take Shedeur Sanders, what is our young quarterback plan? So while Travis Hunter is a clearly better prospect, I just am uninspired by what Russell Wilson brings to the table
Yeah.
for a team who plays in a division with unequivocally the two of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. And depending on I guess, where you land on the Rorschach test, that is Dak Prescott, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFC. And their schedule, Mina, I'm sorry, Giants fans, it is wretched next year. I think the only way they have some hope is at least a young quarterback that they can say, it may not be this year, but our Northern Light exists in the form of Shedeur Sanders.
I find it so hard to predict how this shakes out
Yeah,
because I keep looking at through the Giants through the lens of job preservation. I think a lot of us are.
Yep.
And which is a terrible way to run a team. But whether or not that incentive aligns with what they're going to do is also confusing to me now. So I think your theory or the idea that they might let's just get all the quarterbacks and figure it out. And it might be how this plays out. If it does play out that way, New England Patriots fans will be very happy because that means Travis Hunter, wide receiver / corner / wide receiver. Depends on we can talk about that, is still on the board. So I think personally, probably the alternative, and I'll probably introduce this next week, would be a trade down versus that. But we're not doing trades in this one. So I'm going to put Will Campbell, the left tackle, out of LSU.
Yeah, I'm team left tackle for Will, by the way, Mina. And just for those that are watching right now on YouTube, I'm just keeping notes to make sure that I don't lose track of what is taking place. I'm not distracted when Mina is talking. I just want to make sure that I don't say something twice because I'm not paying attention. That was my filibuster because I had nothing to say for the Patriots other than congratulations, you just got the best player in the draft who happens to fill a major need for New England, more wide receiver than cornerback because they have obviously an excellent corner in Christian Gonzalez and then also a very good corner in Carlton Davis, who they paid big money for just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I have said that I think Travis Hunter, the probably best, or what I believe the optimal outcome for him is cornerback with wide receiver reps, but it's very difficult for me to imagine shaking it out that way, pardon me, if he's in New England. Also, that's fine because he is also, I believe, the best wide receiver in this draft. So
and it's not even close in my opinion in that regard.
Okay, so the Jags are crestfallen because Travis Hunter would be amazing for them.
Here's where it gets fun.
Well, I don't know. Does it get fun here? Because I feel like this is the most chalky pick I've seen of because I've been looking at mocks, trying to figure out if this could go in any other direction other than the player who I'm going to put on top here. And that's Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. I also threw in Will Johnson. I think corner is a pretty strong need for the Jags. He's my cornerback one, which is not everybody's cornerback one. There's another one who you're going to hear about very shortly. But, dude, Mason Graham, it feels like it's just etched in stone at this point.
It really should be, Mina. He's a classic don't overthink it prospect. He did weigh in at 296 pounds at the combine. He's got shorter arms in the 12th percentile for a defensive tackle. I don't know where that length showed up on tape because it didn't really bother me one bit whatsoever. Mason Graham entered Michigan as a relatively lower profile recruit compared to a lot of these 5-stars. Then he got to campus day one as an 18-year-old true freshman and absolutely whooped up on grown men in the Big Ten. He is an outstanding pass rusher. You have to divorce yourself from the value of sack totals when you're evaluating defensive tackles. So much more of it goes beyond just sack totals, but he's a disruptive player. On top of that, Mina, True Media, which we work with at ESPN, keeps what we call run stuff percentage stats. It's the percentage of plays in which a defensive tackle is accounting for a run stuff. And obviously, the higher the percentage, the better the run defender. Mason Graham had the second highest run stuff percentage amongst defensive tackles in the FBS last year, only trailing J.J. Pegues from Ole Miss. He's a really fun player that'll go somewhere in D3, who also, by the way, had 7 rushing touchdowns as a defensive tackle. Lane Kiffin was he was just showing off last year with J.J. But Mason Graham is a classic don't overthink it prospect for a team that is desperate. I mean, on defense, you can make a case the Jaguars could attack first, second, or third level at pick number 5 overall, and I'd have no issue with it. But this is, to me, the most logical slam dunk fit here.
If you heard a quiet profanity while I was talking, that was me because I put marker on my pants, not because I agreed with everything Field said. All right. The
I
Las
hate when
Vegas Raiders pick 6. I'm going to give you 2 offensive choices here.
yeah, this one's tough, Mina.
Ashton Jeanty. I think it's harder than people think,
It is.
personally.
Yeah.
You got Ashton Jeanty, the running back out of Boise State, Mcmillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona.
Yeah.
I actually think both of these players would fit hand in glove in this offense.
Yeah.
Who would
So
you
this
pick?
this is probably the closest. This is probably the first time where I really feel like my prediction and my opinion misalign. Because
Ooh,
I'm going with Tet McMillan here, and I've been mocking Ashton Jeanty there. The Raiders GM John Spytek was on hand for Genty's very impressive pro day where he did only positional drills. But man, that is a cut up young man. He's 5'8.5", and he is just full muscle inside of
brick
that frame.
house.
And I mean, he's so clearly the best running back in this class. We'll talk about Amari and Hampton at some point during this first round. I'm not comfortable with the mocks or with the if it's a reality, it's not just a mock, but if the gap between Ashton Jeanty and the next picked running back is only 6 selections, I feel like we've lost the plot here because he is far and away the best running back in this year's class. I don't think it's a close argument whatsoever. But Tetero McMillan has probably been overanalyzed. Ran, according to scouts that I talked to, somewhere between 4.53 and 4.57 at his pro day. I'm not sure the straight line speed was a real deficiency in the reps that he got where he had the chance to just run straight at the collegiate level, but this guy's a very good route runner for a 6'4", 219-pound perimeter receiver. He's got this crazy catch radius that you want for a guy who's that big. I've mentioned this previously. He's got a volleyball background. You can kind of see it show up when the ball is in the air for contested catch situations. The Raiders have, I guess, their wide receiver 1 in Jakobi Meyers, who is like our favorite underrated wide receiver, also going into the final year of his contract. So right now, the Raiders' nucleus beyond 2025 does not include Jakobi Meyers. Give me Tet McMillan. This guy is a stud.
T-Mac, Bowers, Jacoby is such a great trio. It fits really well together. And I would argue, I'll get into T-Mac more when I talk about the prospects. Really good fit with Geno Smith, who is an aggressive quarterback who will push the ball, downfield, who will give him the opportunity to make some of those contested catches. I mean, there's a value aspect to this as well, right? Which is
Totally.
the money would be another reason to take him here over Jeanty. But that one's close, and I think your analysis of it, I think the Raiders would probably go that direction. All right, yeah. I think this is a really interesting debate too.
All right,
the Jets are not going to take Ashton Jeanty if he's still there.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm giving you a choice between Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State, and Armand Membou, offensive tackle, which of course is also a need for the Jets.
Yeah, I kind of wondered too. I was talking about this with someone on Thursday, so the day before you and I are having this exact conversation. I kind of wonder if T-Mac has just not been mentioned enough for the Jets. Like other than Garrett Wilson, like I'm not sure it's anybody that scares you at all. Yeah. So just tuck that thought in the back of your mind. But it's Armand Membou for me here, just because it's such a dramatic need. Like right now, the Jets offensive line has some building blocks that you can feel good about. But you need to have a right tackle in this league. It's becoming clear that the positional value gap between left tackles and right tackles is not that significant. This is not the only way to think about this. I probably could have introduced this in the Tet McMillan versus Ashton Jeanty conversation, but the top paid tight end in the NFL makes like $17.5 million a year. I think it's George Kittle still. The top paid right tackle is Lane Johnson, who's up at like 28 million bucks now. Like at some point you do have to account for the spot that like, if this player hits his upper tier outcome, what is he worth to us on that second contract? And you want to find players that make 30 or 35 or $40 million on their second contract when you're picking high in the draft. That's probably a bit reductive. I also think Membou is a heck of a player, great athlete, imposing offensive tackle who really he set the tempo for the offense. He did on many occasions last year for Missouri. So impressed by the tone-setting nature to him. And I do think this is the kind of guy that can be the player the Jets park opposite of Olu Fashanu for the next 7-8 years.
Yeah, if you think about like a long-term plan for the Jets, let's build the offense, then put in the quarterback next year. Yeah. That would certainly be a step in that direction. All right, the Carolina Panthers, pick 8, have a few needs, but edge is probably the biggest need that they have in their entire roster. So I'm giving you choice. We haven't talked about your edge rankings. I love talking edge right now because everybody is all over the place after Abdul Carter, which is really fun. So the 2 edges you're choosing between are Jalen Walker out of Georgia, who played both off the ball and on the ball. And then Mike Green out of Marshall, who was an incredibly productive pass rusher. Who are you going to take?
Yeah, led the FBS in sacks and Mike Green was 17. I'll go with Jalen Walker here, but it's closer than I think people maybe imagine. Mike Green at this pro day recently, Mina, worked out as both a defensive lineman and a linebacker just to give teams a bit of a feel for what kind of athlete he is. He's an incredible athlete. He does 6.85 3-cone. I think it was a 4.25 short shuttle, both like high end times that were right around where Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College is at the combine, amongst the very best for all the edges in this year's class that did test. But I'll go with Walker just because you've seen it at two spots more, and it would give Carolina a bit more certainty in terms of what they're getting. Not lost on me that Carolina's general manager, Dan Morgan, played, of course, linebacker at the U and then in the NFL before working for the Bills, Seahawks, and now the Panthers. So I do see Morgan being a little more interested in taking a guy who has that stand-up linebacker skill like Jalen Walker does. But Mike Green, I think a worthy conversation this high in the draft. I don't think he falls out of the first half of the first round.
All right. The New Orleans Saints could go in a few different directions. I'm gonna keep my Green here.
Okay.
And then I'm going to give you a choice because really they could go anywhere on that defense.
Yeah,
they have to. There's a need to get younger and faster at basically every position. And I'm going to put Will Johnson on the board. So again, he's my corner one.
Yep.
Not everybody's, but so you talked about Mike Green, Johnson. What would you do with the New Orleans Saints?
I'm going to go with Will Johnson here. Was a slightly better grade, and I think really any position is a need for New Orleans this year. Maybe throw out a couple left tackle, Tali Fuaga, their first-round pick last year. They've got some recent and decent investments at defensive tackle, safety, but there's a lot of places where this team could certainly go. But I'll go with Will Johnson, who, Mina, I do wonder if Will had run a 40 at some point during the pre-draft process, if we'd all be sitting here and saying to ourselves, like, what are we doing debating Will Johnson? He never ran a 40. There are some questions about the top end speed. They really don't bother me. I mean, I watched the 6 games from this past year, obviously a limited sample size compared to prior years, but I just didn't feel like it showed up. Truthfully, I saw him chase down wide receivers. I saw him rip off a 90-plus yard pick 6 against Fresno State, which isn't the Olympic track team, but still, it's not like he's playing a D3 school. So I feel like Will Johnson's speed is probably a bit over-discussed for my liking. I'm taking Will. I feel really good about him. And if you're concerned at all about whether he can be a man coverage cornerback, adjust your coverage preferences a little bit, right? I mean, the Packers last year hired Jeff Hafley from Boston College, who has this aggressive nature. They led the NFL in coverage snaps that were in zone last year. So, or they were tied, I think it was with maybe Tampa or Chicago. The point is, if you can't morph on defense, you're probably not going to hold up in this league.
It's a new regime in New Orleans, right? Because like when I was doing this, I'm so used to New Orleans being like big edge rushers, man coverage corners. And then I was like, oh, wait. It's an entirely new coaching staff, Brandon Staley. Yeah. So, okay. I was smiling because I realized I'm setting you up for an incredible Sophie's choice with the Chicago Bears.
Oh gosh.
And this
it is
I
good.
think is realistic. I think you know what direction I'm going to go in here. Yeah. Ashton Jeanty, the running back, is back on the board, but so is Will Campbell, the tackle out of LSU. What are you going to do here?
Yeah, I know. One more time, Mina. I'm just going to lean towards the positional value here. It's Will Campbell, and I love Ashton Jeanty. And to me, it's crazy to think that he could even be available at pick 10 or 11 in this scenario.
You know where
he won't last much longer. Yes, we do.
We all know.
So you can start looking at Zillow right now, Ashton. Will Campbell, though, Mina, I just love the player. He's been sort of steadily near the top of my board throughout the process. He's the 5th overall player on my board, 1 spot behind Ashton Jeanty. So Jeanty is a worthwhile conversation here. And it's hard not to think about Ashton Jeanty being the centerpiece of the Bears run game, which is going to be insane because it's Ben Johnson. He's a mad maniac. That being said, Will Campbell may not even start for Chicago as a rookie. As a matter of fact, probably is a long shot to start right now based off of the starting 5, but that we have seen the attrition hit almost literally every year in the NFL along the offensive line. Will Campbell absolutely, to me, can be a left tackle, but if he has to play guard, that's fine. The Bears just traded for a 32-year-old in Joe Thuney. If Braxton Jones has a solid season this year, you want to extend him and you make Will Campbell a big-time guard for the next 10 years, totally fine by me, Mina. I would say this, while it's not quite on the level of offensive tackle, I do think that we need to be mindful of the growing value of defensive tackles. We're seeing these guys make $26, $28, $30 million a year. Who do they most often get blocked by? guards and centers. So if the defensive tackles at the top of the heap are becoming more valuable and going higher in the draft, we should not be as, I think, close-minded about guards going really high in the draft as well, because they're playing what is a very valuable spot.
That's a good point. I don't know if Bears fans would be happy or mad. I think they would be. I think Jeanty is so tempting.
He is.
But you listen to Field. The case you outlined is very logical. All right. You won't have to wait long to hear Jeanty's name again, but it will not come up for the San Francisco 49ers, who are picking at 11. Interesting spot, needs in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Yeah. Not quite aligning, though, with where they're picking in some ways. So I'm going to put Mike Green back on the board because they obviously need edge. But I'm also, this is the first point where I'm going to introduce Jahdae Barron, the corner out of Texas.
So perceptive by you, Mina, because I have a 2-round mock draft coming out. I don't know exactly when this is dropping, but it's Wednesday. Okay, all right. So Wednesday, a couple days from now. And weirdly enough, like the fulcrum for me was the 49ers pick at number 11, because if the edge isn't there that they want, Will Campbell's gone as well. What do you do? Find out on Wednesday, of course. I'll go with Mike Green, though, just because I do think that edge and offensive line help, plus defensive tackle, by the way, it's just significant need for San Francisco. I mentioned Mike Green a little while ago, had the 17 sacks, led all of FBS, second in pressures. You know, it's Marshall. It's not the same level of competition as some of these other guys, the Georgia guys and others played against, but he had 2 big-time exposures this year. Ohio State and Virginia Tech, both games in the first month of the season. Against Ohio State, he put like an absolutely insane spin move on Josh Pryor is going to end up being drafted at some point, probably late day 3 from Ohio State. And then against Virginia Tech, either a week or 2 later, he had 9 pressures, right? So you know what the game plan was when you're playing Marshall. It's block 15. It didn't work very well against those 2, higher level programs. So I thought that Mike Green showed well in his biggest exposures and has had a steady pre-draft process. Went to the Senior Bowl, looked the part, had the viral video of running through Josh Connerly, who's a great player from Oregon, and then that strong showing at the pro day as well. I think kind of stamped him as a top 15-ish player.
Okay. For the Dallas Cowboys with pick 12, I'm going to give you a similar choice to the one I gave the Raiders.
Yep.
Ashton Jeanty or a receiver. The receiver is Matthew Golden, also out of Texas.
Yeah.
Also after Barron. Who are you taking?
I'm going with Ashton Jeanty here. The fall lasts exactly 11 picks to number 12 overall for Jeanty, who, I said a lot of nice things about him a few minutes ago. Those all stand true here. And, there's such a desperate need at running back for Dallas. They obviously took a couple of calculated swings this offseason. Javonte Williams, does that really get you that fired up? I mean, they've kind of pieced it together in that backfield, has Dallas, but none of their veteran signings this offseason suggest to me that they are done. And there is great depth in this draft class. They've got huge needs at other spots, including, I would argue, wide receiver. They need more corners. They need more pass rush. That being said, give me Ashton Jeanty, because for a team that I think wants to be competitive again next year, Mina, Ashton Jeanty to me is the clear rookie who has the fastest path to a Pro Bowl season as a rookie in this entire class.
Yeah.
And that's kind of independent of where he goes, right? Like he could be, the Patriots could take him 4th overall, and I'd still like his chances to become a Pro Bowl player.
Cowboy fans, this is like, they would just go absolutely, I mean, it would be insane if this happened.
Great beater.
Okay. Miami Dolphins, obviously needs on the offensive line, but I would argue trenches, both sides, corner.
Totally.
2 Texas players I'm giving you. By the way, so I've watched so much Texas football over the last months. We're keeping Barron, Jahdae Barron on the board, and I'm going to introduce a offensive tackle, Kelvin Banks Jr.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Banks here, Mina. He'll be interesting where he actually lands. He's a little all over the board and talking to scouts. I've had people tell me this is more of a 20s, somewhere in the 20s offensive tackle, late 1 offensive tackle. Then I've had other people people ask me, like, is he going in the first 5 picks? I don't know if that would be like a really? Patriots or Jaguar suggestion. That's probably a little higher than I expected for Banksy, but I do think he's, the range is probably maybe as soon as San Francisco, depending on how the board shakes out, and then probably down to like Houston at 25 is the lower end for Banks. But I'm going to go with Kelvin Banks here for Miami, only because I do think the offensive line needs are desperate. Tackle and guard. Some question coming out of the season whether Banks is a guard or a tackle at the NFL level. He did not have this great arm length. He was 33.5-inch arms, Mina, but his wingspan, so that obviously includes not just your arms, but also your torso, was something like 84 and 5/8 of an inch, which for perspective, like that's elite in this year's class. One of the biggest in this year's class, regardless of position. Amarius Mims was at like close to 87 last year, and it was like breaking the scales big. So not quite at that level, but he's a big, broad guy as Kelvin Banks. And I think the key focus from this past year that I thought was not at the level that I expected it to be was just sustaining blocks. That being said, this is a super experienced, athletic, great. We're talking like off the charts character prospect that for a Miami team that probably won't have Teron Armstead next year needs to be thinking about left tackle and probably guard as well in the draft.
It's just such a glaring need for them. It's hard for you to imagine them not addressing it, even if Barron might be the higher ranked player at his position.
Yeah. I've actually got Banks ahead of Barron, but it's close. I think it's like 16 and 18 on the big board, but it is like, that's a good, thoughtful conversation.
Well, speaking of good conversations, I'm going to put 2 tight ends. I feel like similar to Mason Graham to the Jags, tight end to the Colts is the most mocked option. Yeah. And I'm going to, just because I want to hear your thoughts on these 2 players. Yeah. Tyler Warren is back out of Penn State, and Colston Loveland, Michigan tight end, is here.
Yeah. This is, I mean, I think it's a debate. I don't think this is just like, you're taking Tyler Warren and dismissing the possibility of considering Colston Loveland. It's kind of, what do you want out of your tight end? I mean, if you're looking for the guy that's going to separate at the top of routes and, give safeties all they can handle in terms of athletic ability, then it's Colston Loveland, right? If you're looking for a guy who you create touches for him and you let him just do crazy things with the football in his hands, it's Tyler Warren, who had 700 yards after the catch this past year, like a massive, massive number for a tight end. I mean, Penn State was using him in every which way. They're running tight end screens for him. He is playing wildcat quarterback, throwing passes. He's a lefty. Future defensive coordinators take note of that from Tyler Warren. Catches everything that comes his way. He impacts the game, though, more than Colston Loveland does as a blocker. This is not going to impact things too much for me with Colston Loveland, but just a note while we're talking about him, coming off of shoulder surgery. So a team that's drafting him will have to account for the fact that, at least the moment you draft him, he may not be at 100%.
We are talking about Tyler Warren to the Colts on NFL Live today, and I grabbed a stat that I felt to be true and was confirmed. Yeah. The Colts' second least amount of yards after the catch last year in the NFL, the dead last in if you just count tight ends, they had 217 yards after the catch. Pretty sure that's how much Tyler Warren got after the catch in like 2 games at Penn State.
Literally.
That dude is impossible to bring down. Impossible. That is a superpower. So I think the Colts would be thrilled if it shakes out this way.
I agree.
Okay.
It's possible.
It is possible.
Yep.
The Falcons are next. I'm going to give, this is a little bit trickier.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to give you, just because of the players, I'm going to put 2 front 7 players that we have not talked about either of them. Just, I want to hear your thoughts. Jihaad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama, pretty much everybody's linebacker 1, not close. And then I'm going to throw up Mykel Williams out of Georgia, who I think is a very interesting prospect.
Yeah, I'll land on Mykel here. Jihaad is recovering now from labrum surgery, which happened after the combine. So, I can't compare myself to people in many ways that are draft prospects, but as somebody who underwent that same surgery back in September, it's quite a process he has ahead of him to get ready to play football. Training camp starts obviously late July, but I'll go with Mykel Williams here, Mina. The Falcons are in desperate need of edge help. Only the Patriots had fewer sacks last year than Atlanta. They did add Leonard Floyd. Mykel Williams, though, he's 20. He had 14 sacks in 3 seasons. He wasn't, and this is a theme for really all the Georgia pass rushers, asked to just pin his ears back and go every single snap like some other schemes were. So I think the sack production is in part in part explainable by where he played and how they played at Georgia. But to me, a lot of upside. I think he's going to be a much more productive pass rusher at the pro level, has really good length. Like, he's going to impact passing lanes. Like, I'm a Mykel Williams fan. I've got him right around this range in my overall rankings.
At minimum, will help them a great deal against the run. I'll say
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
which is very much needed. Okay, finally wrapping up the first half of the first round, the Arizona Cardinals. Speaking of helping against the run, I'm going to throw out for the first time Kenneth Grant, the
Yeah.
gigantic defensive tackle out of Michigan. And I'm going to bring back Jahdae Barron because corner is also a need for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah,
What
kind of
do
a
you think?
sweet spot here for Barron. It feels like Barron had this remarkable year for Texas. He's just kind of like a nose for the football player. There are certain guys that just kind of find it. Him, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, are amongst the top in that category this year. Barron, I thought throughout the season had like positional versatility to be kind of like almost like a CJ Gardner Johnson, maybe not like as crazy as CJ Gardner Johnson, but CJ obviously is a really great player.
Yeah.
But I think that Barron could also just settle in a corner and be fine. Super instinctive, has excellent ball skills, ran a 4.39 40 at the combine, willing tackler, sees things so fast. Would certainly help Arizona a lot.
Okay. I like that Arizona secondary, how that's shaping up.
Yeah, it's
When
coming
you
together.
throw in Barron, you got Garrett Williams, obviously Buda Baker, Thompson.
Oh, by the way, your head coach used to be a secondary coach for like 15 years.
All right. That's a good pick for them. Let's take a quick break, come back, and do the second half of the first round, starting with the Cincinnati Bengals. We are back. Pick 17, the Cincinnati Bengals. I am going to put two players
Yep.
on the board,
Okay.
one of whom would make me very upset. As you know what? Actually, I'm going to take off Grant, and I'm going to give you a choice between. Sorry, I'm just calling some audibles here. Okay.
Good.
Yeah, as a Seahawks fan, one of these would make me nervous
Yeah.
because I'm going to put Greg Zabel on the board,
Yeah.
who is just offensive line out of North Dakota State. Guard is, of course, a need for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm going to put Jihaad Campbell back
Yeah.
because everything defense is a need, but they just need youth, speed, linebacker position in particular. They desperately need to get younger there. What would you do?
I'm trying not to piss off the host here, but I have to go Zabel. And I like Mina. I think if there is a team that's the most likely to go all on one side of the ball in the draft, it's Atlanta. But Cincinnati would be the close second, with one exception, which would be if they just grab Zabel at 17 and then just go defense the rest of the way. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Zabel had an incredible Senior Bowl week, which that's notable for anybody who has a great week. But when you come from a small school and we haven't seen you against big time competition all year, like that's something that is probably factored into the equation a little bit more. I think this is like right around the range. Like I've got a big grade on Zabel. I won't be surprised if he goes, maybe as soon as the early teens, because he's a hand in glove fit for any zone scheme team, which not to say that's the only thing he is capable of doing. Obviously, Cincinnati, they're not, a zone heavy team a la they just aren't really a running heavy team, as a matter of fact. But, they're not going to be this classic Shanahan, McDaniel, McVay offense where they just want to inside or outside zone you to death for 60 minutes. So Zabel will fit kind of anywhere, including Cincinnati.
Bengals fans, if you're mad about not going defense there or me not getting defensive options, yeah, you're going to get defense. I also just really like Campbell. It's why I gave him as the option. I think he's a really good.
He's a great player. Yeah. No, if it wasn't the injury, I don't know. I mean, like,
yeah,
he's probably already off the board.
He's also just so obviously the best at his position. Okay.
I would agree.
Interesting choice here for the Seahawks. Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama, or Colston Loveland, Michigan tight end. Yeah. What would you do?
I'm going to go a blend of value and fit. It's Colston Loveland for me. Tyler Booker's a really good player. I just don't know if he's a scheme fit for what Clint Kubiak wants to do now. You're looking for these guys. I mean, as we all know, they want to, zone scheme you to death, right? You're looking for these offensive linemen who are a little bit more fleet of foot, because the job is to not just find the guy right in front of you and just, have like a sumo wrestling match, right? It's kind of blocking areas, blocking space, and just kind of finding work. And Booker, I don't think, is quite that kind of guard. He wants to just maul you. He'd fit. I think, if the Chargers were in this conversation, I'd feel a little bit differently about it. So I'm going to go with Colston Loveland, who, they have Noah Fant. Like there are pieces. They drafted AJ Barnett in the 4th round last year. This is a really good player, though. And when you have a new staff, at least on the offensive side of the ball, your priors kind of matter a little bit less. And look at the Seahawks offense after JSN. Who is the threat in the passing game, other than Bobo? Who scares you the most is an opposing defense?
Taking snaps from Bobo, though.
Yeah.
We're going to see more 12 personnel. Don't love that.
I
Okay.
don't like that, yeah.
It would be a very fun and exciting pick for Seattle, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, Tampa.
Yep.
Tampa. I am going to give you Jihaad Campbell again.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in Shamar Stewart for the first time. The edge out of A&M.
No.
I have no idea where this dude is going to get drafted.
Nor do I.
He could go top 15, top 12. He could go fall out of the first round altogether.
Yep.
What would you do if you're Tampa? Both needs, obviously.
By the way, I think he's going like the first 12 or 15 picks.
Woo!
I'm going Shamar Stewart here. And he is a risk. He is a serious risk. For those that are catching up on the draft, if I told you a guy here asking to rush the passer had exactly 1.5 sacks in every college season he played, you tell me that guy's probably not going to get drafted. Instead, he might go 19th overall here, but he is 6'5", 264 pounds, 4'5", 940. And I think what's important here, Mina, is I believe the organization that takes him needs to have a GM with some real cachet. Someone on the hot seat that takes Shamar Stewart, that seat would be exploding with heat if at the end of the year he doesn't play well, right? Jason Light is shortlist for me for best GMs, and all of the NFL has been outstanding at his job for a long time. He's not going anywhere unless the Bucs make a huge mistake and let him go somewhere. So he's the kind of guy that he can take a swing, right? He can afford to do so because he's built an excellent roster. He's won a Super Bowl with this team, got a lot of cachet there. So if it's a need, they did sign Hassan Reddick to a 1-year deal. He was not productive this past year, weird circumstances, all that. I get it in New York. This would be a swing, and it's going to take the right organization, but Shamar Stewart allowed to just pin his ears back and go. Todd Bowles, of course, what's he not afraid to do? Attack. So give me Shamar Stewart going 19th.
All right, pick 20. We talked about this in the last episode. The Broncos have like a really good roster all of a sudden. Yeah. I'm putting these two players because I kind of want to hear your evals. I'm giving you two receivers to choose from. Yeah. Matthew Golden, and this is the first time I think Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State is showing up.
Yeah.
Who is my wide receiver 3. So.
Egbuka was your wide receiver 3. Is that correct? Yeah. The big board has a little bit of a gap between those two players for me. Golden has sort of taken the lead there. The 4.29 40 is part of it, of course, but it translates on film, in my opinion.
I guess, sorry, I forgot Travis Hunter. I keep leaving him out. So
Egbuka's okay. No, I know what you're saying too. No, I get it.
Hunter, Mcmillan, Golden, Egbuka is my order. Sorry.
I don't even count Hunter in the wide receiver or cornerback counts. I just put him in his own unicorn category. But Golden, he just rolls in and out of cuts, the way that he is just he just snaps routes at the very top and creates separation on guys. And obviously is very fast when the football is in his hands. Clutch football player. I think he just has more juice. Denver is sort of an interesting one because, they had the 8th most yards after the catch last year. So the question would be, anytime you see a team that's near the top of the yards after the catch list, and it's not over a prolonged period of time, for all those years, San Francisco just yacked opponents into oblivion, right? Last year, less so. Is it because they just believe Sean Payton just wants his system to operate this way? Or is it because Bo Nix, their quarterback, is better equipped to sort of play the game horizontally and win from the short to intermediate level as opposed to down the field? He made some great throws down the field late in the season, did Bo Nix. It was the 91-yard touchdown to Marvin Mims against the Bengals in a primetime game that was one of the better throws you saw all season. That being said, they're unafraid to also kind of slice you and dice you meticulously, so that might give you some Emeka Egbuka credence. That being said, I just think Golden gives him a bit of a different dimension that with Courtland Sutton going into his final year, him currently being their best vertical threat, Golden could kind of be help you now, but also help you in a different way a year from now if Sutton were to play somewhere else.
I like that pick. I'm a big fan of Golden. Okay, the Steelers, 21. This is, again, what you would do, not what you think they will do.
Yeah.
We're going to put up the quarterback out of Ole Miss, who I was just watching again yesterday. I'm doing quarterbacks next week on the pod, so Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to throw up Malachi Starks here, the safety out of Alabama.
You and I are either going to will a Steelers quarterback signing into existence, or we're going to be sitting here on Monday when this drops and we're like, Mason Rudolph's still the Steelers quarterback? I'm going Jackson Dart. They don't have a choice here, right? In this scenario, I don't know exactly why Aaron Rodgers hasn't made a decision on where he wants to go, Mina, but the fact that he hasn't at least opens the door to him not playing for Pittsburgh. It's not that there's an obvious suitor for him
Yeah.
elsewhere. It's that he's 41 years old and he may not want to play football anymore, right? Like that's not like it's not as if Aaron Rodgers, at least that I can recall, plainly stated, I am absolutely 100% playing football next year. This is exactly what I plan to do. Like, I felt like the door has been left open by kind of all parties here. So I'll go with Jackson Dart. And Mina, he is one of those guys that on the best moments, like I see the really good from Jackson Dart. I think that for me, I wish I felt it more play in and play out. I think he's got a good arm. I think he's a good to very good athlete at the quarterback position. I think it requires like a bit more horsepower for him to step into these throws. And arm strength is not the only thing that matters by any stretch as far as NFL quarterbacks are concerned. But sometimes, Mina, when you're playing under duress, it's just like, do I have enough zip to just fire the ball away, right? I mean, we really saw that, or see that, I should say, with Cam Ward. He's got a howitzer. Not quite the same level for Jackson Dart. It's a big transition from the Ole Miss offense to the NFL, I think. I like Jackson. I'm not fully convicted on him as like a clear-cut top 20 player in the class, but at 21 with their situation, I'm still going with Jackson Dart. Without spoiling it, are you warmer or colder based off what you heard from me on Jackson Dart, or about the same?
I think he has really good traits, and there are things that I like. I do not love the idea of him starting year one, and that's my worry with Pittsburgh, you know? But again,
I think we're on the same plane as far as
yeah,
prospect evaluation is
I
concerned.
I don't know what the hell's gonna happen with Aaron Rodgers, so,
Yep.
I mean, they just gotta figure that inflects all of this because like, I actually don't hate a Dart Rodgers, even though it's not that idea makes sense to me, so I could see that for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, the LA Chargers are picking at 22.
Yeah. This gets me fired up. Because the draft, I really believe is while you're writing down names, I'll just talk to the listeners and viewers here for a second. Like, there's such a small variance between my like 20th ranked player and like 35th ranked player. And I feel like that might be something you hear around this time every year, but man, does it feel more prominent this season.
So I was tempted to go actually Amarian Hampton here, but I'm not. I'm going to put Ibuka back on,
Yep.
and I'm going to throw back Kenneth Grant
Yeah.
because Puna Ford is no longer a Charger. We got
Yep.
the Michigan connection. What would you do?
All right. I'm going to go with Kenneth Grant here,
I would love
who,
that. I would love it for them.
yeah,
Kenneth Grant.
yeah, yeah. And I just, for all these coaches who talk about how like you have to win up front, no one preaches it and actually like follows that up with action more than the Chargers do, right? I mean, Jim Harbaugh basically told us the minute he got the job, he was taking Joe Alt fifth overall last year. And we're all like, yeah, but Malik Neighbors, right? And Malik Neighbors is incredible. I don't think anybody would have begrudged them if they made that the pick. But Alt, he looks like he's going to end up being like maybe an all pro at his unnatural position of right tackle as opposed to left tackle. There was no wrong answer there. So I'll go with Kenneth Grant, who 331 pounds, Mina, not as disruptive as a pass rusher as his counterpart, Mason Graham, has such great size that he makes life easier for other people. And I think this is a team that would value it. The first half of last season, they slowed the games down and did play like grinded out football, which one of the realities of playing grinded out football yourself is that sometimes other opponents will like match wits with you. So they might find themselves in a few more 17-13 games than the average team of their caliber. And having great defensive tackles is an important part of that. So give me Kenneth Grant.
I'm a huge fan of Kenneth Grant. Okay, the Packers are up. The Packers do not take wide receivers in the first round, but
Yeah,
I'm going to put Ibuka back on.
Yeah.
Getting this pen everywhere. And I'm going to throw in a pass rusher. I'm going to put Donovan Ezeraku, the pass rusher out of Boston College here as an option for you.
Interesting one right here. I'm going to go with Donovan Ezeraku, and this is going to sound personal for Emeka. It's not, I promise. But not to be lost on us is the fact that, of course, Jeff Hafley was the coach for Donovan Ezeraku, brought him to Boston College, helped him reach some significant heights there as well. Ezeraku is this guy, just a natural get-home rusher. Led the FBS in pressures last year, second in sacks, a half behind Mike Green, he had 3 separate games with 3 or more sacks. I mean, the guy was a play wrecker for Boston College. He can really bend. He's got good length. He's not super bulky, but I mentioned this a little bit earlier, so let's flesh this point out a little bit, Mina. The Packers had played zone coverage in 70.8% of their snaps, tied for the most or the highest in the entire league. That's not what Jeff Hafley wants to do, right? This guy's got some mad scientist to him. He wants to disguise pressures and bring heat and make quarterbacks uncomfortable. I think that was sort of like a chicken versus egg problem, right? They just didn't have the horses either up front or in the secondary to rush or cover. So getting some beefed up pass rush to me helps them play more man-to-man in the back end with guys like Nate Hobbs and perhaps a second round or third round corner to accomplish that a little bit as well.
The Minnesota Vikings are on the clock at 24. They addressed a lot of their biggest needs in free agency. I'm going to give you 2 options for Brian Flores on defense.
Okay.
Going to put Malachi Starks back on the board here, the safety. And then for the first time, player I'm a really big fan of, Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon.
Yeah, likewise on Derek Harmon.
They signed a couple of defensive tackles, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, but they're obviously older players. So
both in their 30s. And Harrison Phillips is 29 now. So their top 3 defensive tackles are all, I know, crazy, right? In Harrison's defense, he came into the NFL like balding, so out of Stanford. So he's a great player who's been very, very successful and a great guy. He's done a ton of work for the community on top of being a great player. I'm going to go with Malachi Starks here, Mina. And Malachi had a different year this past year, just 1 interception. It came in the opening game against Clemson. It was this beautiful highlight reel play that everybody saw. His impact was a lot less this year than the year prior. 2023, he was everywhere. He was a vacuum. That being said, he is a good example of a guy who you got to just give yourself the multi-year sample size. At his best, he can play the deep portion of the field in the middle of the field. He can hover over the slot and cover some bigger wide receivers, some tight ends as well. He can play in the box. He kind of does a little bit of everything. Didn't have a great combine in terms of the athletic testing, ran a 4.5. And it's going to sound a little bit daunting, Mina, but keep in mind, so few players actually do all the testing here. But of all the defensive backs at the combine, he had the slowest short shuttle and 3-cone. So he's a little bit more divisive than you thought he was going to be coming into the season when you talk to evaluators around the NFL. He's a darn good football player, though. And I think that Brian Flores, and this is something that I've noticed in scouting, Mina, and talking to people, is a lot of people kind of have a forward thinking or like work from the front or work from the back approach. And some people will look at what a guy doesn't do and kind of push him off their radar early. And then others will just say, all right, here's the stuff that he can do at a high level. Let's see what we can work with. I think Brian Flores is the kind of guy that's not afraid to find the good in a player, work with it. Malachi Starks has a lot of good. And of course, Cam Bynum is now an Indianapolis Colt.
Dream outcome for Malachi. If
he boy.
He play with Carson Smith, Flores is amazing. Okay, no secret what the Texans need. I'm going to give you 2 guys who play the same position just to find out who you're higher on. The Joshes.
Yeah.
Offensive tackles, Josh Simmons, Ohio State. Josh Connerly Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon.
It's a good debate here, Mina, because Houston would represent one of the spots where Josh Simmons does not need to play right away. He tore his patella tendon back in October of this past season. That prompted Donovan Jackson from Ohio State to move to left tackle, played amazing. He's my guy in this year's class is Donovan Jackson, at least on that very short list. So I'm going to go with this one, with Josh Connerly here, Mina, just because they did sign Cam Robinson to a 1-year deal. Cam, there's a reason why he was traded for a moderate cost, and there's a reason why he had to kind of wait and not get a premium contract from Houston. So I think you take the player who you feel a little bit more conviction on. Josh Simmons is awesome. He's incredible. Patella tendons are scary for 330-pound dudes. So give me Josh Connerly. Maybe I'm being a bit risk averse, but this team needs to get it right because protection completely screwed them on offense last year.
I would hate.
Close.
No. I'm with the Rams now, and I hate the fact that Jihaad Campbell is available to them here. As a Seahawks fan, I would be so annoyed. So I know a lot of folks are thinking corner. I'm actually going to leave Simmons on the board for many of the reasons you described. They did just sign Alaric Jackson, but Rob Havenstein is nearing the end of his career. So I'm going to leave him here,
Yeah.
but then I'm also going to have Campbell back.
I'm going with Josh Simmons here, Mina. Good call. And by the way, of note that if he is ready to play, Mina, this is a guy who played guard previously, right? Like he was a guard at San Diego State 3 years ago. Some of these players obviously have changed schools. That's where he began his college, did Josh Simmons. So he was a guard previously. That part, is accounted for in his bag. But, obviously LA feels good about where they're at. But the point I say is just like, if it's not at tackle, if somebody else gets hurt at guard, there's an opportunity for him to play there. And I just think that with Rob Havenstein being kind of a year-to-year proposition now, can't hurt to insulate yourself. The Rams for so long didn't have a first-round pick. They had one last year. They nailed it with Jared Verse. They're not afraid to take guys who have some question marks, right? Last year, Verse, a little bit of an older prospect. Some were concerned that the upside wasn't as high as some of the other rushers in the class. Braden Fisk was light with short arms. And then those guys ended up being like the two best rookie defensive linemen, or on the short list for the two best rookie defensive linemen in the entire class. So the joke was on the rest of the NFL. So give me Josh Simmons, who is an excellent football player. If the patella tendon was healthy, then man, this might be he might be a New England Patriot at number 4 type of conversation. That's how talented Josh Simmons is.
The Baltimore Ravens are next. Not a lot of glaring needs, but one of those needs is guard. I'm going to put Tyler Booker back on the board. And then for the first time, I'm going to introduce the Tennessee edge, very divisive prospect, James Pierce Jr.
James Pierce Jr. is my pick here. The Booker makes a lot of sense because we were talking about how he's like a zone versus a power scheme. Ravens not afraid to run the football right at you with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and all that stuff. I'm going with James Pierce here. And Mina, he is a tricky one. At his best, and we're talking about a 248-pounder who ran a 4.47 40. Like, are you kidding me? He can really bend the edge. Some of the advanced metrics, I'm not sure if that's the proper terminology, but some of the, I'll call them advanced metrics, like James Pierce, like he had a high edge pressure percentage last year. I believe it was second to only Abdul Carter. He had 7.5 sacks last year. He had 9.5 the year prior. This is not the kind of guy who I think is like going to go like, teeth to teeth with a guard who's pulling and want to like really meet him there and make life miserable for that guard. But the Ravens play with a ton of leads. And what do you need to do when you have a lot of leads? You're protecting against the pass. James Pierce can get home, and they really need another rusher here. Kyle Van Noy has been this incredible late career revelation for – he's actually just always been really good, Kyle Van Noy. But Odafe Owe is their best and kind of only young rusher in the stable that as of right now, you're saying to yourself, like, this guy is a huge part of our future. So give me James Pierce.
5 picks left. Pardon me. The Detroit Lions at 28. I'm going to leave Tyler Booker on the board. And then I'm going to add another edge, Nick Scorton. Am I saying his right name? Scorton?
You are, Scorton.
Yeah. Out of Texas A&M.
I'm so glad you brought Scorton into this conversation here, Mina. He might end up somewhere in like the top or the middle portion of round 2. Lions are good for a curveball, though, aren't they? I mean, they're just going to do what they want.
I know. Watch them take Marion Hampton.
They're just a little bit less determined. They determine their own board a little bit less based off of like what people like myself or Mel or anybody who's Jordan, Matt covering the draft are talking about, right? And Scorton he led the Big Ten in sacks back in 2023 when he was at Purdue. And this guy, he's got this like thick build through his he's got this huge barrel chest and like not super duper long, 33-inch arms, 200, I want to say 60 pounds or right around there at the combine. The sack production dropped this past year to 4.5 sacks, but this guy is like every single play is just giving you the fits. He is maybe the best run defender out of some of these top edges. Both the Ohio State edges are very disciplined in that regard as well, but Scorton is just a force on the edge. The Lions have an archetype, right? You got to play like a lion. He definitely does. And we've talked a ton about the arm length for Will Campbell. I actually think the guy who gave Will the toughest time play in and play out this past year was Scorton, who doesn't have super long arms, but he does feel like a lion to me.
Wow. Oh, the Commanders are devastated as these edges keep falling off the board. I mean, I'm looking to see who's even left for them. Gosh. This is the thing where their biggest need just might not align with where they're picking, to be honest. I'm looking
they're a prime trade out team, Mina, to me. I think
Yeah.
it is.
No, I'm
Just
in agreement.
yeah, 5 picks. They've traded for, as you
That's a
may
great
have heard,
point.
Marshawn Lattimore and Deebo Samuel and Larry Tunsil. So they, I think if you are like if this scenario, the Giants have already taken a quarterback, but if the Giants don't, Giants, Browns, teams that could be looking to move up. I also think like if either of those offensive tackles that we recently discussed, Josh Connerly or Josh Simmons, still here, you could see some teams shuffling up the board for those kind of guys, the defensive tackles as well. There's some interesting guys who could spark some trade back interest for
Yeah.
the Washington Commanders.
All right. Well, we're not trading, so you have choice. I'm leaving Tyler Booker on the board because they
Yeah.
do need offensive line reinforcements. And I'm going to throw in, instead of an edge, a corner.
Yeah, I like this one.
Maxwell
Max Harrison.
Hairston, the speedy corner out of Kentucky. What would you do if
Yeah,
you were Adam Peters?
I'm going to go with Hairston here. They just need more. They need more oomph at that cornerback spot, right? And Hairston can flat out fly. You know that because he ran the fastest 40 at the entire combine. It was a 4.28. This guy's got serious juice here, Mina, and he's just sticky. He's really sticky. Like the 4.28 shows up on film. Like if you try to throw the football deep against Max Hairston, like the trick is that like even if somebody gets a step on him, if the ball's traveling 40 or 45 years in the air, he's got a pretty good chance to catch up to you by the time the ball reaches the receiver, right? Like we saw that a couple of times this past year. He's confident as all get out, Mina. Like this guy, and he's 182 pounds, I want to say. He's not the super physical corner, not the kind of guy. Like this is not like Cortland Finnegan out there, the longtime Titan, who's just got a real edge to him. But he's got a different kind of edge to him. He's super confident. He led the SEC interceptions 2 years ago. He had 2 pick sixes in the same game against Vanderbilt. I'm a big fan of Hairston. He's got excellent ball skills. And, this is some might say, well, this is the same franchise that drafted a 167-pound corner a couple of years ago in the first round, that being Emmanuel Forbes, and traded him within like less than 2 years of his career of his career beginning. I think Hairston's a different cloth than Emmanuel Forbes, what I'll say.
Okay, I like these choices for Buffalo, actually.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah.
I don't think any of the wide receivers, I mean, people will be surprised by Ibuka and Burden are still here. They just don't align with, certainly, I'll tell you what the Bills don't need, slot receivers. So
yeah.
I'm not going to go receiver. I'm going to give you 2 defensive choices, and I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay.
We are bringing back Derek Harmon, and for the first time, I am throwing in Nick Amenwori, the safety out of South Carolina. So the Buffalo Bills, you have a choice between Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle, and Nick Amenwori.
Yeah, give me Derek Harmon here. I was thinking about this, and I don't think that you can be such a prisoner of the moment to just do things based off of one instance or one game. But what was the difference in the AFC Championship game, both on offense and defense for the Bills? It was the Chiefs were able to convert on short yardage, and the Bills weren't, right? They famously did not convert the tush push, or whatever you call it when you're in Buffalo. That being said, I do think just like generally speaking, they got to add like a little bit more bulk to their defensive front, right? Like Greg Rousseau is an edge rusher, like slightly lean. He's not tiny by any stretch, right? But like Ed Oliver, like everything's relative for these guys, right?
Yeah.
Everything is relative. But they're slightly leaner defensive front. You need a guy just up there. And by the way, Derek Harmon, 35 defensive tackle pressures last year. So pressures when aligned as a defensive tackle. By far the best in the FBS. This guy's got some serious pass rush juice as well. He's got this, I think, crunching power at the point of attack. He's got these long arms too. Like he can lock out, find work, and win in the running games. I'm a big Harmon fan. I'm glad he got into the first round in this equation.
Okay, the Chiefs at pick 31. Yep. I am going to put Ibuka back on the board. It's funny, I don't really see many people mocking them receivers unless I've missed it. But and then I'm going to throw in a player who we have not talked about, and that is Walter Nolan.
Yeah, this one's
defensive tackle out of Ole Miss.
Yeah, give me Walter Nolan here. Mecca's going to crush me, but give me Walter Nolan. I mean, this guy is ridiculous, Mina. The range here is so wide for Walter Nolan. Like, if you tell me, I've thought about this. Like, I truly have. I thought about Walter Nolan 11th to the 49ers. The best tape of Walter Nolan this past year is like really freaking good. He had 6.5 sacks, his best in 3 seasons in college, 2 years at Texas A&M, and then a final season at Ole Miss. This guy's been known since like early high school days. He's just a really dominant, forceful, overwhelming power player at what we described earlier as one of the premium positions now in the NFL, right? Milton Williams. And I get it. You pay the tax in free agency. He's a $26 million per year player, Mina. And like, if you were to just build your best defensive tackles in the NFL, I don't know exactly where he ranks, right? But he's not, and he's a great player. I'm not begrudging the Patriots. They had all the money in the world. They had to pay somebody, and he makes them much better, right? And he could, like, he's on a trajectory to be great. The point I'm saying is just that defensive tackles are worth so much more now, right? That Walter Nolan's a hard guy to pass up. The Chiefs did lose Tank Wharton, by the way, in free agency to Carolina. Him and Knowlton are different type of players, but
it's a need.
It's a need, yeah.
All right, you said defensive tackles are valuable. I'm going to put another one on the board. 2 players I haven't talked about at all for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going defense, both picks here. Darius Alexander, defensive tackle out of Toledo, or Trey Amos, the corner out of Ole Miss, who we have not talked about.
Yeah, we haven't talked about him. So, man, would it be hilarious if the Eagles they draft these 2 corners last year, they become stars, and everybody's like, yeah, they've got their corners for a decade, and then they do it again the following year. I'm going to go with, I've got a higher grade on Trey Amos. So I'll go Trey Amos because there's obviously no more Darius Slay, no more James Bradbury, no more Isaiah Rodgers. Trey Amos, who, let's just start here, right? 6'1". I think it's 6'1", 6'1", 197 pounds, 4'4", 340. Amos, interesting story. He played at 3 separate schools. He had 2 at Louisiana, 1 at Alabama, then 1 at Ole Miss. And with that, I remember thinking at one point during the process, I remember asking the scout, anything going on there? And he's like, no, he's a great kid. He just circumstances, right? That's the new college football, right? He's a great kid. He just wanted, different opportunities. So he's up at Ole Miss, and he's got really good ball skills. He finds the football when it's in his area. He's just too big to throw the ball over, I should say. So Trey Amos for the Eagles would be another one of those. And I'm sure fans who don't live in Philadelphia or don't root for the Eagles are just going to be mad at us when we probably praise the Eagles' first-round pick if they make it. But they really, really do look good to have, or they would look really good with Trey Amos in that secondary as well.
Yeah, I do think there weren't any glaring droppers. Just looking at the final draft here, I would say probably the biggest surprises will be Jihaad Campbell. We just couldn't find a home for.
It's really all about the surgery too, Mina. I've talked to people recently. This is relatively fresh news, and I've talked to people that are late ones, the latest. I've talked to others who are there's no way I'd take him in the first round. If he's a 6-month recovery and he's available, I get it. You're not drafting these guys for the first 4 weeks of your season, Mina. But at the same time, you're drafting guys in the first round to fill needs, in a lot of cases, immediate needs. So it's going to be a heck of a value. Whoever gets Jihaad Campbell, if it's 25th or beyond, I have a hard time pinpointing that spot myself.
Yeah, no. And then the 2 receivers, I never introduced Luther Burden, but that would be an interesting one at the top of the second. And then we talked about Ibuka. But again, that was fit, it's just fit is the thing. Him and Hampton is the other name. But otherwise, I feel like you made a lot of really good picks, Field. I like a lot of these fits. They're fun to talk about. We'll see if others agree. I'm going to introduce trades next time. If you guys are draft heads, you should obviously check out First Draft, which is available wherever you get your pods and also on YouTube for much more in-depth draft talk. Otherwise, I'll be back next week with another mock draft.
There's nothing better than a mock draft, Mina. Thanks for having me on.